Jake Sullivan, 38, sat behind the wheel of his sleek black pickup truck, gripping it tightly as his sharp eyes glanced at the phone screen on the dashboard. A message from his assistant popped up, curt and to the point. "Board meeting at 3 p.m. Don't be late." He smirked, not bothering to reply. As the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company, Jake was used to reminders like that. Unnecessary, but part of a life measured in seconds. For Jake, time was money, and he was always on time, always in control. Except today. The road leading into Dusty Hollow, a small town on the outskirts where his company planned to build a new research center, was nothing like the polished highways he was used to. It was bumpy, covered in gravel, flanked by sun-scorched fields under the midday March sun. Jake hated driving on roads like this. The sound of the gravel crunching under his tires grated on him, like it was scraping away at the order he clung to. But he pressed the gas pedal anyway. Nothing mattered more than inspecting the multi-million-dollar land deal he'd staked his name on. He checked the time. 1:45 p.m. Still enough time, assuming nothing went wrong. Something went wrong. A harsh crack echoed from under the truck, like something had snapped. Jake hit the brakes, but the pedal sank loosely beneath his foot. No response. He pressed harder, heart pounding. The truck wouldn't stop. The tires skidded down a short slope, veered off the road, and before he could react, he was tumbling into a patch of wet grass on the roadside. His knee slammed into the ground with a jolt, his jacket tore down one sleeve, and his expensive phone went flying into the ankle-high weeds. He cursed, propped himself up with both hands, trying to stay calm. Pain throbbed in his knee, and blood seeped through the gray khakis. But he didn't care. His first thought was the meeting. If he was late, the board would use it as ammo to question his leadership. Jake looked around, breathing hard. The road was empty. Just the wind rustling through dry grass and a few distant cars whizzing by. No one stopped. No one even looked. They sped past as if he were just another piece of roadside trash. He gave a crooked smile and muttered, "Should have figured." No one gives a damn. In Jake's world, kindness was a luxury, and if it showed up, it usually came with a price tag. He'd been burned too many times. Fake friends asking for money, co-workers buttering him up to climb the ladder, even relatives finding excuses to reach into his wallet. Trust, for him, was an old scar, faded, but still stinging when touched. He bent down, fingers digging through the damp grass, searching for his phone, mud smearing his hands. His mind raced with backup plans. Call the assistant, rent another car, make it on time. Then, a soft voice cut through his spiral of thoughts. "Are you okay?" Jake turned, slightly startled. A woman stood there, petite, in a faded blue cotton dress with frayed edges. She looked to be in her early 30s, her hair tied up with a yellow scrunchie, eyes a clear blue filled with honest concern. A small tote bag hung from her shoulder. Maybe she'd just returned from somewhere. Without waiting for a response, she stepped closer and knelt beside him without hesitation, hands already parting the grass. "This yours?" she asked, holding up his phone. The screen had a scratch, but still lit up. "Thank goodness it's not broken. I saw your truck go off the road. Scared me half to death." Jake nodded, trying to respond but only managing a quiet, "Yeah." He wasn't used to strangers helping without some kind of catch, but the woman didn't seem to notice his awkwardness. She pulled a handkerchief from her bag and gently dabbed at the blood on his knee. Her touch was light but sure, like someone who was used to taking care of others. Her dress soaked up the moisture from the grass, dirt smeared across the fabric, but she didn't seem to care. She just smiled. A warm, genuine smile, free of any pretense. "It's just a scrape, not too deep. "Clean it up and you'll be fine," she said, standing up and rummaging through her bag before pulling out a small bottle of water. "Here, drink this. You look a little pale. That fall probably shook you up." Jake took the bottle, his hand trembling slightly. Whether from the pain or the surprise, he wasn't sure. He looked at her, searching for something familiar. A curious glance trying to figure out who he was. A probing question to dig for information. Or maybe a polite, calculated smile aimed to win favor. But there was nothing. She just stood there, hands dirty, dress stained, and that same warm smile on her face. He took a sip of water, the cold liquid helping him feel more grounded. "Thanks," he muttered, his voice hoarse from the fall. "You didn't have to do all this. Your dress is getting dirty." She laughed, a clear, easy laugh, like a breeze rustling through a field. "So what? It'll wash out. Besides, I couldn't just walk by and leave you lying here. That would have haunted me all day." She waved her hand as if it was nothing at all. "Can you stand? I could call someone if you need—" "No need," Jake cut her off, pushing himself up, trying to act casual even as pain throbbed through his knee. He brushed the dirt off his shirt and glanced at the damaged truck a few yards away. "I'm good. I'm J.J.?" She tilted her head slightly, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes, but didn't press. "I'm Lily. I work at the bakery just down the road." She pointed to a small storefront about 100 meters away, its gray tiled roof peeking through a thin line of trees. "If you need anything, stop by. I've got a delivery to make." With that, Lily turned and walked off briskly down the gravel road, her figure gradually disappearing around the bend. Jake stayed there, still gripping the water bottle, watching her go with a strange feeling stirring in his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to be suspicious of. She hadn't asked who he was, didn't ask for his number, didn't act overly friendly to win him over. She simply helped, then left, like a passing breeze that left no trace, except for the image of a dirt-stained dress and a smile that lingered in his mind. He stuffed the bottle in his pocket and limped back toward the broken truck, his mind already recalculating his next steps. But in that moment, standing alone in the dry fields beside the empty road, Jake found himself thinking, maybe, just maybe, kindness wasn't always a trap. He shook his head, scoffing at the thought, then pulled out his phone to call his assistant. Still, deep down, the image of Lily in her faded dress clung to him, like a small light etched into the gray canvas of his world, one he couldn't wipe away and didn't quite want to. A week had passed since the roadside accident, but Jake couldn't shake that day from his mind. The board meeting had gone smoothly. The research center was approved, the stock price ticked upward, and he remained firmly in control. But every time he sat in his leather chair overlooking the city skyline, his mind wandered to a dirt-smudged dress and a smile that didn't want anything in return. Lily. She wasn't like anyone he'd met. No demands, no probing questions, no sign she knew or cared that he was rich or powerful, and that made him curious in a way he couldn't explain. Today, Jake decided to return to Dusty Hollow. No fancy pickup, no tailored jacket. He wore a pale blue shirt, faded jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't want to be recognized, especially not by Lily. He told himself it was just to say thank you, to quietly repay a kindness. He hadn't managed to say anything meaningful before she left. But deep down, he knew there was another reason. He wanted to know if her kindness was real, or just a well-played act he had somehow failed to read. Lily's bakery sat at the end of the gravel road, a quaint little shop with a weathered wooden sign that read, "Lily's Treats." Through the front window, Jake saw her behind the counter, kneading dough, her hands moving with practiced rhythm, the warm light above casting a soft glow on her focused face. He pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed overhead. Lily looked up and smiled that familiar, unguarded smile. "You again?" she said with a gentle laugh, as if they were old friends. "How's the knee?" Jake nodded, tugging his cap a little lower. "It's fine now. Thanks for what you did the other day. I was just passing through." Lily wiped her hands on her apron and stepped over to the counter where a few trays of baked goods were laid out: cookies, muffins, and some simple cupcakes. "Well, it's good you stopped by. Want anything? I baked these this morning. They're cheap." Jake glanced around, pretending to browse. He didn't know much about pastries, but he pointed at a box of chocolate chip cookies. "These look good. How much?" "Just $5, Lily smiled. "You like chocolate?" "I spent half the morning baking those." Jake nodded vaguely, pulling out his wallet, trying not to look too awkward as he paid and took the small box. He hadn't planned to buy anything, but standing here, listening to her talk about her morning and her baking, he felt oddly at ease. With Lily, he didn't have to be Jake Sullivan, the cold, calculated CEO. He was just Jay, some guy who stopped by a bakery, and somehow that felt better than he expected. After that day, Jake started coming back more often, sometimes with the excuse of buying more pastries, other times asking about baking tips, though he could barely hold a whisk without making a mess. Lily never questioned it. She just laughed whenever he clumsily dropped crumbs or complimented the wrong thing. Through those short conversations, he slowly learned more about her. Lily was 32. She'd once dreamed of opening a big bakery in the city, but those plans changed when her father got sick. She returned to Dusty Hollow to care for him, stayed for 3 years until he passed, and then decided to keep the small bakery running. Her life was simple, sometimes difficult, but she never complained. "As long as I'm alive, there's something to smile about," she once said, when he asked why she didn't go back to the city. Jake never shared anything about himself. He just listened. He liked the way she talked about small things, a customer who liked her cupcakes, or a bird that landed on the bakery roof that morning. With her, he forgot the cold numbers, the tense meetings, and the constant scrutiny of his world. They grew closer, though no one said it out loud. To Lily, he was just a kind stranger. To Jake, she was a quiet corner of peace he hadn't known he needed. Until one night, everything shifted. That evening, Jake stopped by late, carrying a cheap bottle of beer he'd picked up at a nearby store. A casual excuse to hang around longer. Lily accepted the offer, though she admitted she didn't usually drink beer. They sat on the front steps of the bakery, moonlight casting a pale glow on the gravel road. After a few sips, her cheeks turned pink, and her words slurred slightly. "You know," she said, swaying her bottle a bit, "I really hate rich guys. They always use money to control everything. Buy emotions, buy trust, like everything's got a price. My dad used to be a gardener for this rich family in the city. They treated him like dirt. I never forgot that." Jake froze, the bottle in his hand suddenly heavy. He looked at her, searching for something to say. But Lily leaned back and let out a low chuckle, like she was laughing at herself. "Good thing you're not like that, Jay. You're a decent guy." He forced a smile, saying nothing. Her words hit like a slap. Decent? He didn't know if he really was, or if he was just enjoying the rare chance to live without being watched, judged, or manipulated. He was Jake Sullivan, the richest kind of rich man she despised. And for the first time in his life, he felt afraid. Not that she'd find out, but that he might be the one to ruin whatever this fragile, unnamed thing between them had become. That night, Jake walked away with a heavy head. He knew he couldn't keep the truth hidden forever, but every time he worked up the nerve to tell her, something inside him hesitated. He wasn't sure if she'd understand or accept who he really was. And he kept wondering, would Lily's kindness still be the same if she knew he wasn't the Jay she thought? In the days after their moonlit beer night, Jake kept stopping by Lily's bakery like it was a habit he couldn't shake. He never brought up what she'd said about hating the rich. It stayed with him like a splinter, sharp and quiet, hurting just a little every time she smiled. He knew he was walking a tightrope. The closer he got to Lily, the more he wanted to tell her the truth. But that also made the fear of losing her peace weigh even heavier. He kept telling himself he'd find the right moment. But that moment never came, until everything spun out of his control. It was a quiet afternoon, the breeze carrying the dry scent of grass through the small town. Jake was sitting inside the bakery, holding a box of fresh muffins Lily had just baked, pretending to ask about the recipe just to stretch his time there. Lily was telling a story about a picky customer who thought her cupcakes were too sweet, her voice full of humor. Jake laughed, but his chest felt tight. Today was the day he had planned to come clean, to tell her he wasn't just Jay, but Jake Sullivan, CEO of a tech empire. He'd practiced what to say, even pictured how she might react. Surprised, maybe upset, but eventually understanding. He believed she was different from the people who had tried to use him. But just as he was about to speak, the doorbell jingled. A man stepped in, wearing a crisp gray suit and dark sunglasses, exuding the kind of sharp confidence that came from giving orders. Jake recognized him instantly. Mike, the project director for the new research facility, the guy he'd sent to Dusty Hollow for a final site check. Mike didn't see Jake sitting in the corner. He gave Lily a nod and launched into his speech like he was pitching something at a board meeting. "You're the owner here? I'm with Sullivan Tech. We're about to break ground on a research center nearby. You've probably heard. My boss, Jake Sullivan, wants every detail checked before we begin. He's picky, doesn't like mistakes." Lily nodded politely. "Yeah, everyone in town's been talking about it for days." She glanced over at Jake and smiled gently, trying to bring him into the conversation. "Jay here drops by often. I'm sure he knows all about it." Mike frowned, then turned toward Jake. He pulled off his sunglasses, and his eyes went wide. "Boss? Jake? What are you doing here?" The air in the bakery went still. Lily froze, the tray in her hands suspended mid-air. Jake shot to his feet, trying to keep his composure, but his heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He glanced at Lily, watching her expression shift. Curiosity gave way to confusion, then realization. She slowly lowered the tray onto the counter, her voice barely steady. "Jake Sullivan. You're Jake Sullivan?" Mike, oblivious to the shift in mood, chuckled. "Who else?" "That's my boss. He likes to keep a close eye on things. Never trusts anyone to get it right but himself." He turned to Jake and clapped him on the shoulder. "Taking a little break out here, huh? I figured you were still at HQ." Jake brushed off Mike's hand, his voice cold. "Stop talking. Wait for me outside." Mike raised an eyebrow but shrugged and stepped out, leaving behind a silence thick enough to choke on. Lily stared at Jake. Her bright blue eyes had dimmed, like the sky before a storm. She stepped closer, her voice low and tight. "You're Jake Sullivan? CEO of that massive tech company? You knew all along? And said nothing?" Jake took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "Lily, I meant to tell you. I didn't know how. I was waiting for the right time." "The right time?" She cut him off, a bitter laugh slipping through her lips. Nothing like the light, breezy sound he remembered. "How many times have you come here? Sat and listened to me talk? Bought my pastries? And never once told me the truth? What did you think I was? Some kind of game? A charity project to make you feel like a better person?" "It wasn't like that," Jake said quickly, his voice tight. "I wasn't playing around. I came because I wanted to thank you. And then, I felt at peace here. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd see me differently." Lily shook her head, her hands clenched into fists. "You weren't afraid I'd see you differently. You wanted to test me, to see if I'd suck up to you like everyone else. You think I'm too dumb to realize that? I hate people like you, rich, powerful, and convinced they can control everything, even how others feel." Her words cut into Jake like a knife. He stood still, not defending himself because deep down he knew she was right. He had hidden the truth, doubted her, let his own fear cast a shadow over the sincerity she had offered so freely. But he didn't want it to end like this. He stepped closer, his voice lower, steadier. "Lily, listen to me. I admit everything. I'm Jake Sullivan. I'm rich. I've spent my life mistrusting people because everyone always wants something from me. But you're different. I didn't come here to test you. I came because you made me believe goodness still exists. I was wrong not to tell you, but I never once saw you as a game." Lily stared at him, tears running down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. She just shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "You talk a good game, but I don't believe you anymore. Leave, Jake. I don't want to see you again." Jake stood there, wanting to say more. But he couldn't. He knew he had broken something, not because of who he was, but because he hadn't trusted her enough to be honest. He turned and walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, he looked back and said one final thing. "I wasn't testing you. You made me believe in kindness again. Thank you, Lily." The bell above the door chimed as it closed behind him, like the soft sound of goodbye. Lily sank behind the counter, burying her face in her hands, not crying from heartbreak, but from the hollow sting of being betrayed by someone she once thought of as a friend. And Jake, standing outside on the gravel road, stared at Mike's black pickup parked nearby, knowing he had just lost the one thing money could never buy. A month passed since that day Jake walked out of Lily's bakery, leaving behind the sound of a closing door and her shattered trust. He went back to his world, glass towers, endless meetings, the hum of success. But nothing felt the same. He worked like a machine, approving the research center plans at a record pace. But every time he saw the layout of the land in Dusty Hollow, a hollow ache tugged at his chest. Lily wasn't just someone who made him believe in kindness. She made him realize how deeply lonely he'd been. Meanwhile, Lily carried on with her life at the little bakery. She didn't mention Jake to anyone, didn't tell the story of the man who'd lied to her. But every time her eyes landed on the blue cotton dress hanging in the corner, still stained, still unwashed, her chest tightened. She wasn't angry at him for being rich. She was hurt because he made her believe in something, and then shattered it with his own hands. She told herself she'd forget. But deep down, she knew she wouldn't. Then one morning, a plain white envelope appeared under the bakery door. Lily picked it up and saw bold lettering. Invitation, Sullivan Tech Research Center groundbreaking ceremony. She nearly tore it up. But curiosity got the better of her. Inside was a formal invitation, and below it, a single handwritten line. "I hope you'll come." Lily clutched the paper, her heart a mess of feelings. She didn't want to see him again. But something in that short message made her hesitate. On the day of the groundbreaking ceremony, Lily stood quietly among the crowd in her simple cotton dress, her eyes scanning the scene without expression. Jake appeared on stage in a sharp black suit, his deep voice resonating through the microphone. He announced the launch of the new research center, but then, to everyone's surprise, his speech took a turn. "Today," he said, "I also want to announce another project, the Lily Grant, created to support women from small towns who pursue crafts and handmade trades. The first recipient is Lily, right here in Dusty Hollow. She's inspired me, not just with her skill, but with a kindness I've never experienced anywhere else." Applause rippled through the crowd, but Lily didn't move. Her hands trembled as she was invited to the stage. She stepped up, not to accept anything, but to speak. Her voice was cold, clear through the mic. "Thank you, Jake Sullivan, but I won't accept it. I don't want anything from someone who couldn't be honest with me." She turned and walked off the stage, leaving Jake behind with sad but unsurprised eyes. The audience murmured in confusion, but Jake didn't explain. He just gave a small smile, as if he'd expected this all along. He knew money couldn't fix what he'd broken, but he still wanted to do something. Not to win forgiveness, but to give back what she had once lost. A few days later, a small package arrived at Lily's bakery. Inside was an old notebook. Her notebook, the one she used to sketch recipes back before her father died, the one she had thrown out during a painful cleanup. Somehow someone had found it and turned it into something more. Each recipe had been recreated, tested, and neatly packaged into small sample versions, so beautifully done she barely recognized them as her own. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. "Start again. Chase your dream. Jay." Lily sat down, clutching the notebook to her chest, tears falling before she even noticed. She understood. He wasn't using money to buy her forgiveness. He was offering a second chance. Not to make her owe him, not to win her back, but to give her the freedom to choose her own path again. The next day, Lily went to the newly built research center. She didn't call ahead. She just walked into Jake's temporary office, where he sat reviewing blueprints. He looked up, surprised, but didn't speak. Lily stood there, eyes steady, voice soft but clear. "The dress I wore that day, I still haven't washed it. I was afraid if I did, I'd forget how that moment felt." Jake looked at her. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply nodded, as if that said everything. Then he slid his chair back and poured 2 cups of coffee from the small machine by his desk, handing one to her. They sat together in the quiet of the research center. No apologies, no explanations, just coffee and the view outside the window. Beyond the glass, in a small display case, sat Lily's first chocolate muffin, the one she'd made the day they met. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it had been preserved like a work of art. It marked the beginning of everything. A fall, a kindness, and a trust rebuilt from what had once been broken. The story ended in the glow of the late afternoon sun, as golden light streamed through the window, catching on the crumbs of that muffin. Quiet, honest proof of something real between 2 people who had once lost their way.